The topics and opinions expressed on the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4WN Radio.
This is Beyond Confidence with your host, Divya Parekh. Do you want to live a more fulfilling life? Do you want to live your legacy and achieve your personal, professional, and financial goals? Well, coming up on Divya Parekh's Beyond Confidence, you will hear real stories of leaders, entrepreneurs, and achievers who have stepped into discomfort, shattered their status quo, and are living the life they want. You will learn how relationships are the key to achieving your aspirations and financial goals. Moving your career or business forward does not have to happen at the expense of your personal or family life, or vice versa. Learn more at www.divyaparekh.com, and you can connect with Divya at contact@divyaparekh.com. This is Beyond Confidence, and now here's your host, Divya Parekh.
Good morning, listeners. It's after holidays, and I hope each and every one of you had a wonderful, wonderful holiday. And I wish you, if you have taken time off, to have wonderful times with your loved ones. So folks, if you have got a copy of our books, it's awesome. And if you have not, please do get a copy of our books, either Expert to Influence or The Entrepreneur's Garden, so that not only you thrive in your business, in life, or in career, but also the profits from the books can help entrepreneurs who have been impacted by different hardships. And as always, I'm going to highly encourage you to take out 1 hour of your time. Yes, just 1 hour of your time every month and give it with your heart. Put your heart into it and give it to someone with no strings attached. Think about it. 100 million people did that every month in the US alone. We would have 100 million hours, folks. So go and do it. Let's welcome our guest today, Natasha Miller. Welcome, Natasha.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's wonderful to have you. So how are you this morning?
Well, the sun hasn't risen yet, so I'm not quite sure how I am, but I think I'm good.
Well, Natasha, I know you have such a varied and diverse background. Let's start out in your childhood. So when you were a child, did you have any desire to become something when you were older, or do you recall a moment that stands out in your memory even today?
I think when I was little, the only thing I thought I would ever be and ever wanted to be was a musician, a singer, a pianist, a violinist. And I wanted to be that, but I also didn't know that I could be anything else.
Oh, wow. It takes a lot of discipline to stick with those instruments and learn, because I know I tried learning, and most likely I don't have a musical bone in my body, I guess. And the music teacher would tell me, I think so, Divya, we have tried enough. And she was the one to tell my parents, like, okay, I think so, it's time to move on, And it's all of us have our strengths, and that doesn't mean that if you are not good in something, you cannot be good at something else. So to me, music is so precious. So tell us, as you continue your journey in life, where did music take you?
Yeah, I would say, first of all, even though you weren't good at it, and even though people listening may not be good at a musical instrument or singing, if it gives you joy, you should still do it. So you don't need to be good or professional to do those things. But anyway, I started playing violin in 4th grade and quickly became pretty good. I think I had a natural knack for it, but I also loved practicing. So that is one thing that was on my side. And it took me through to youth symphony when I was very, very young. I was playing with high school students, to a full ride scholarship to colleges. It allowed me to have my first paying job as a classical violinist in a string quartet. And that informed me of Entire Productions, which is my core major business right now. So it really has pulled me up through life.
So I know you have a very impressive bio, and the reason folks have not shared with you is because I want to weave the story through Natasha's life. She has a lot of accolades, and here's what I can tell you. She's a member of the Recording Academy, Grammys, and she is on the board of EO, Entrepreneurs Organization. She studied entrepreneurship at Harvard Business School and MIT. A lot of things happening here. So a lot of things to dive into. So tell us that, as you continued, you talked about, that you are so focused on the music, and it's amazing. And thank you for sharing that you just don't have to be that good to play music. And I will tell you, I do. I've got a small drum which I just kind of bang on, when I'm stressed out and nobody's there to hear me, and I do sing in bathroom. So I've not given up on my music.
Perfect.
It may not be musical, it may be noise, but it's music to me. So that said, share with us as to how did your journey go from being a violinist to entering into the business area?
Well, when I was 15, my first paid event was to perform for our governor's inauguration. And then, when you first get your taste of money, it opens your mind, hopefully. And from then, I was playing professionally with my string quartet for social and corporate events. And when I got so busy and I had to turn down offers because I was already booked on that same night, I would bring in other groups that were just like me and manage them. So I unofficially had a business. And then 20 years ago, I started officially Entire Productions. And it was a slow going situation for the first 10 years. It was more of a lifestyle business. My daughter was in school, and I didn't go out to marketing events and social events to kind of network and get to know my potential buyers. But when she got into high school, I did start doing that. And that's when the business exploded.
Got it. And so you started at such a tender age of 15. So many other kids at that age are partying and, drinking, thinking like, oh, nobody's going to notice. And of course, we all notice when our kids are drinking. So instead of doing that, what made you stay focused on music and expanding your business?
Drinking and doing drugs and things like that weren't terribly interesting to me. I mean, I was curious, but I was pretty straight-laced, and that really had nothing to do with my upbringing. It's just kind of, and also to this day, I don't enjoy alcohol, so I just may not have had a taste for it. But I did love achieving things. So if that was the last seat of the second violins for the youth symphony when I was in 6th grade, so be it. But I quickly made my way up to the first violin section and then eventually concertmaster. So those were my drugs, I guess, my vices.
Well, and those are wonderful vices to have, because here's the thing. It's about bringing joy and happiness in your life and sharing that with others. And the modality and the medium it's just something that we use. Some people are awesome at sports and they thoroughly enjoy that. So there is no one thing that makes human beings happy. And that's the beauty of it. Otherwise, think about it. If everybody was just kind of running and doing the same thing, how boring life would be. And we would not be having this conversation here.
No.
We would all be just kind of sitting and be like robots. So that is so fascinating. So you mentioned that, your business exploded in college. Tell us your journey from there till now.
So my business exploded when my daughter was in high school, when I couldn't well, when she didn't need me around as much. And so
Mhm.
I began attending events within my industry. So organizations that supported the event and entertainment production industry. And that's really where the magic started happening. In 2015, I did the Goldman Sachs 10K SB, so 10,000 Small Businesses program. And that really started the snowball effect of growth for me. So I grew 65% that following year and just kept turning over pretty big growth spurts. And through EO, Entrepreneurs Organization, I've been able to study entrepreneurship at the Harvard Business School, and I'm still in a course at MIT through Entrepreneurs Organization. It was stunted because of the pandemic.
Right, right. And through this pandemic, I have had conversations with the musicians, and the business was impacted severely. How did you fare through it, and did you have to pivot?
Oh my gosh. So, in the year before the pandemic, we had produced over 650 events. And I would say, yeah, all of them were in person. So, in 2020, when everything went to zero in March, I had $1 million payroll, and it was just devastating to think about the future of the business. And those days we thought, oh, the pandemic, well, it was not yet a pandemic, but it'll be, a couple weeks, maybe a couple of months at worst. But we knew that people weren't going to be getting together in large groups. So I had a panic attack, like real horrible situation. And I had to lay off half of my team, and it felt horrific.
Ah,
But I was able to come up with an idea
mm-hmm.
for virtual events that were
Mm.
faster paced with shorter segments and lots of entertainment, interactivity, experiential. And then on each side of those modules, let's say 15 minutes of like a mentalist or a musician, then the CEO could come in and give his message, or, there could be some sort of format. But this kept people's attention. And we ended the year of 2020 with 200 virtual events completed and a little bit of profit.
That is so phenomenal, Natasha. I gotta give you and your team kudos, because so many companies and so many businesses went down under. And I recall, like, in 2019, and my team, we had spent almost like month into the end of 2019 and a couple of months into 2020, and we had our retreats booked, and we were so thrilled because, like, okay, you know what? In comparison to the rest of the years, we're ready to rock, and we are out there to just take it easy and cruise through 2020. And of course, we had to pivot, and it was tough, but
Yeah,
we
we're
survived.
still
And
in it. We're in the middle of it.
yep.
So keeping the wheels turning and greased and coming up with new innovations and new ideas and new decisions that work today was something that we had to do. And one of those things that we did beside moving to virtual entertainment and events was we opened a division for gifting. So a lot of corporate events, when you go to them, you receive a goodie bag or you receive a tchotchke of some sort, or if you're in the C-suite, gifts for thanking you for your great work, can really get up there in the hundreds of dollars. So almost every one of our clients needs that. So we opened that division, and I think we did $120,000 in revenue in the first month. And that was like a hair before we got our resale license. So that is the true meaning of entrepreneurship, is just have an idea, turn it on, maybe ask for forgiveness if you don't have all your ducks lined up in a row, or make sure that you are getting everything in a row so that you're not bitten at the end.
Absolutely, you said it. And what a powerful idea that you have things, and you don't have to start anew. It's about taking what you got and turning things around and finding your assets and creating income streams of it. And that's what we did. And not only we did survive, we thrived through it. And actually, it's been a couple of great years, surprisingly. And we just feel blessed and very grateful. So, Natasha, you always talk about, definitely talking about, that entrepreneurs, you've talked about lifestyle business, and, entrepreneurs need to see more profits in the business because it helps. If
Mhm.
entrepreneurs are seeing more profits, they'll employ more people. Like you mentioned that you have a team as well. So, what are those 5 actions that entrepreneurs can take to increase their profit line?
Oh, wow. Okay, now we're getting into what is pretty exciting for me. I'll give you some examples, some real life examples that I discovered that I think everyone should really take some time to consider and look at in their own business. So in 2019, we were spending about $65,000 on credit card merchant fees.
Hmm.
I never questioned it. I didn't know that there were options. I didn't feel that there was a way to pass on that fee to my clients if they, really wanted to pay via credit card. But through Park Place Payments, that's a tongue twister, I discovered that we can send invoices out. And if the client wants to pay by credit card, then the fee that is attached to that service is on them. And we don't have to write it in the contract. And they either pay it or they have another way of payment, ACH, etc. So right there, if you can save that much money in your company, guess where that
Hmm.
goes? Profit.
And what was the name of the app that you mentioned?
It's a company called Park Place Payments, and
Uh-huh.
it's Card One, which is the tool that we use. So that's one of the things that you can do. Another thing that is really important, and it's harder for me to do as the owner of the company and a little easier for my employees to do, is to certainly raise prices. So raise the cost to the client. We're providing an incredible service and we deserve a profit margin, right? But not only raising prices until the client or until people push back, but also negotiating with your vendors, which I think is another thing that isn't necessarily top of mind all the time because salespeople just want to get the sale, right? But if you incentivize your team on both volume and gross profit, you will start to see a change. So those, 3 things actually is raise prices, negotiate with vendors. Most vendors are willing to give about 10% away from their top line. So if you're not asking for it, you're not getting it. No one's going to say, you know what? I think I should give you a discount. They're just not going to do that. And then the incentivizing your team is really important too. So that's number 2. I'm going to have to think of these because I don't have them in front of me, but I teach this all the time. So the third thing to do is automate anything and everything that is low touch or that is repeatable so that that's freeing up money and time and people to do other things. So we created a system in Salesforce that runs our entire business from A to Z. And it probably takes right now the place of 2 to 4 total employees. So salaries in San Francisco are about 75,000 to 120,000 per person. So you can see it's not just savings, it's a profit margin. Now, it did cost money to build that system, but I started building that system in 2013. So now the money that I'm spending is only on tweaking the various things that you can do in the system. And what I do is I ask my employees, what are you doing repeatedly that you want to stop? And you can't not tell me because I can't afford not to know. And then we automate those things, or we try to. Hi, Divya.
Hi.
I
Technical
think I
glitch.
lost you there.
Yeah, no, some really powerful tips over there. So you talked about, companies, and now let's say, some of our listeners are solopreneurs. What could they do? Like you have shared your learnings. Can you transfer that to solopreneurs?
I think solopreneurs have the same types of overhead, the same types of pricing and negotiating skills that they can tap into. Certainly, solopreneurs are taking credit cards. And there are a lot of industries and a lot of people I hear, they say, oh, my clients would never, ever pay the fee. Well, my clients are Google and Apple and LinkedIn, and they have huge buying power. And they could push back and say, we're not doing this. But we have such an incredible service. And if a solopreneur does as well, they can say, well, you're able to pay via credit card if you pay this fee, or you can pay via all these other methods. And, you can push back. So I think the one thing that people think is, oh, that will never be able to be possible for me and my business. I think that's faulty thinking.
Well, that is very true. And one of the other ways that, we have worked through, like with some of my clients, what we have done is that just kind of increase the pricing in a way that, for example, let's say if it is 947, make it 997. So if you don't want to sit and negotiate with your clients that, oh, you got to pay the credit card fees, then it raise the prices so that it's included. I mean, there are multiple ways that can be done. And
Absolutely.
what you shared is very powerful. So let's kind of talk about, you always talk about bringing in live music into. So is there something that you could do for us today?
Me personally, for live
Yeah.
music? Well, okay, so I haven't been awake very long, but I can sing a little, oh, what a beautiful morning. Oh, what a beautiful day. I've got a beautiful feeling. Everything's going my way.
Oh, that's beautiful. Natasha, what a beautiful voice. And I like that, you are on the Pacific coast. The sun has not risen for you yet, and yet
It's
you're in that
coming.
mood.
It's coming. I see it.
Oh, you can see it. Yay. And you are in that mode of having a beautiful morning. So you have shared with us that, you have gone from homeless shelter to being a multi-million dollar company. So you did talk about your company. Would you be open to sharing that aspect of your life? And how did you end up there and how did you get out of there?
Yes, so I had a not rosy upbringing and some, I would say, domestic violence issues in the home. And on Christmas Day, when I was 16, I really did fear for my life. And for the first time in a lifetime of being threatened, I finally called 911 to get help. But this was in the mid-'80s in Des Moines, Iowa. And there's not a whole lot, there weren't laws that were really protecting children at that time to the extent they do now. And so they offered my father a place to take me for safety, and that was called the Youth Emergency Shelter Service. And so I was grabbing all of my clothes, anything I could fit into a hefty garbage sack, and driven in the ice cold snow, forgot my coat, to the shelter where I stayed for some time. And there was talk of going to foster care. And at that time, I was studying with a great professor of violin at a private college. So I said, there's no way I'm moving 200 miles away, possibly, because they can place you anywhere in the state. So I learned that I was actually considered an abandoned youth and basically emancipated, even though we didn't have that official law in Des Moines at the time, or in Iowa at the time. So I got a full-time job. I was trying to go to high school, but I I didn't attend all the classes. If I weren't practicing in a practice room, skipping classes, then I was probably sleeping in. And I would always made it to orchestra and youth symphony and string quartet practice. So those were my my targets. And I was able to graduate. I don't think my GPA was great, but I got into 3 different colleges and attended 3 on a full ride violin scholarship. So I sneaked through, I guess.
Well, what a journey, and kudos to you. I acknowledge you for not letting that hold you back. Because so many times what happens is that life throws lemons at a lot of people. And we all get lemons in some form or shape.
Absolutely.
And I don't know a single person who has not had lemon in their lives, but to make that lemonade, not only for yourself, for other people, where you're serving other people, is so powerful. So, Natasha, I'd like to celebrate you in this moment. And absolutely. And there's so many mamapreneurs, women entrepreneurs out there who are listening and thinking, yes, and if Natasha could do it, I can do it too.
Absolutely.
So share. You said it. Absolutely. So share with us. Let's say there's solopreneurs. How can they, what are your insider tips that you may have for growing and scaling a business?
I would say number 1, and I did not do this. I was so proud to have my own business and be doing it on my own without too much help. But when I started studying entrepreneurship and business and learning the language, being mentored, getting advice, paid advice. So mentorship is inherently a non-commercial thing. It's just an agreement, right? But a paid advisor is a different thing. And all of those things combined, I would highly suggest for anyone that is in business at any point. I wish I had done it earlier. I was getting a lot of kudos for doing it on my own and it felt good. But wow, would I have been way more ahead. Now, that wasn't where my path took me and that wasn't what my journey was going to be, which is fine. I don't really regret it. But now when I see entrepreneurs out in the wild, I want to shake them and say, oh my God, I can tell you there's so much easier way. And here's the shortcut. The shortcut really is open the books, take the courses, learn. That's the only way to do it.
I agree with what you're sharing. And this brings me back to one of my stories that I would like to share is I used to be in the corporate world. And when I moved from the corporate world into entrepreneurship, I felt like a new kid on the block. And I was visiting one of the conferences because, as you mentioned, read books. And I love books. I was devouring books and taking courses. And when I had gone through the coaching school, one of my instructors had mentioned that just because you learn over here doesn't mean that your growth stops. It's important to have a coach of your own because they will show you your blind spots. And I had 2 coaches, one for my personal mindset and one to grow my business. And I'm sitting here in this conference room and there were these ladies who had been in business for 5 to 6 years and they were crushing it. And I was sitting on the table and that accepted me. And even though I had tremendous success in the corporate life, when you're a new kid on the block, you're a starting out entrepreneur, you feel accepted, it feels good. That, yeah, you know what? All these rock stars have accepted you. And me being, a little naive at that time, and our conversation is happening. And I said, oh, I've got 2 coaches. And it was like almost an invisible wall went up. And they stopped looking at me. It's amazing how you can be on the same table and people can shut you out. So I'm sitting there, I'm like, okay, what did I say? I shared that I have a couple of coaches and they are shutting me out. I'm like, so be it. I'm here to listen to Brian Tracy. For me, he's one of my heroes. I've read all of his books and his programs. And he comes on stage and he's talking, and I'm so thrilled and fascinated to hear him in person. And at the end of his speech, he shares that, you know what? I have done over 5,000 speaking engagements. I visited so many countries, and to this day, I've got 7 coaches. And it was interesting how the ladies and a couple of other guys on the table, they're looking at me, and then that wall dissolved again. So when you talk about that, having a coach by your side, I totally agree, folks. Even to this day, I've got my own coaches because learning never stops, improvement never stops, growth never stops. So what a powerful message that you shared. So what else people can do?
What else can they do? I think looking outside of their own industry into other industries and seeing how people are doing things there can be a help to bolster their own work. So, you know, I have to admit, this is kind of embarrassing, but I'm going to just say it anyway. At the Harvard Business School, they teach via a case study method, which is not terribly easy for me to learn by. That's not the kind of learning that I'm great at. And we were learning about steel companies and like all of these things that I had, first of all, no interest in, and no place to put it in reference to my life.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought, well, what the heck am I going to learn with this? It's boring. It's dry. It's like, you know, it has nothing to do with my life. But then I remembered that really learning from other industries, taking what's working for them, also looking at their challenges and kind of ripping it apart is a good way, as you start putting it back together, to see options for your own industry. And so I think, you know, we kind of have this kind of view with a little bit of blinders on. And if we open that up, I think it can really add, certainly. And if nothing else, it's going to stretch your mind and make you think differently.
Absolutely. It's all in the perspective. And Natasha, I gotta tell you that every day I find something new, and it surprises me that, you know what, things can be looked at it this way. So we have talked about a few things. What other things people could put into place to grow and scale their business?
So if you have a team, it is so important to nurture them, develop them, make sure that they feel incredibly welcome and needed. And I didn't understand what that meant to the degree I should have before the pandemic. And I really learned that lesson very hard through the pandemic. And now I feel like, you know, I'm certain maybe I'm 80% of the way there. I always have room to grow. But giving your employees and your team a voice, making sure that they're heard, making sure that you're listening to what they have to offer. And then if it makes sense, putting it into play into your business. That is a lot how my business grew, was following the lead of my employees and what they were saying they wanted. Now, they're not probably going to say what they want unless they are asked. So I send a survey out at the end of the year and I say, okay, what are the things that you loved doing this year? Okay, so they list them out. What are the things that you did not like doing and you would rather never do again? In parentheses, you may still have to do them for a bit, but let me know. And then what are the things that you really want to focus on and learn and grow? Where do you want to be? What is the title that you want to have? What are the positions within the company you want to have? I'm never astounded by the responses because I ask them often and people feel very free to give that information. But today, I'm actually finishing up the plan for next year and I'm putting in to play everybody's responses. And if you nurture and develop a team in that way, they're likely to stay. And the cost of replacing someone that's been at your company for a year is just so astronomically high. It's not just in the salary that you're paying, but it's the ramping up, the training, the kind of tapestry that's been built within the team that's now a little bit severed if somebody leaves. So thinking, well, treat your employees, first, they're better than the client, or they're bigger, they're more important. Yes, it is. It's true.
Yes, you said it, to a lot of people and a lot of companies don't realize that people are the lifeblood of their organization. And when your people are happy, they will become the raving fans of your company, and nobody else can be a better spokesperson for your company than them. And creating a culture which is a safe place for them to voice it and not feeling like, oh, yeah, you know what? If I share something, it's not going to be heard and it's going to be shut down anyway. So why should I even voice it? So what you're
Right.
sharing is so precious, especially in these hard times, because regardless, yes, we got to adapt. Yes, we got to adopt. Yes, we got to be flexible. Yes, we got to be at ease with ambiguity. And yet, there is this hard and harsh fact that we as human beings, we are humans and computers burn out and computers have to be upgraded. And think about it, Windows 10, Windows 11, and even Windows 11, or even if there is any other software, I'm just kind of giving one example, there are always these plugins and they're always fixing it and always updates and upgrades. So we as human beings also need to recharge and make sure that you're creating that nurturing environment for your team. And I'll share with you, Natasha, I sincerely believe in that, because to me, my team is my family. So I want to share, probably a few years back, one of my clients was a very demanding client. And because they were interacting with somebody on my team directly and they did not treat them nicely, and we had a couple of conversations, and yet we were in such a tough place. It was something that after several conversations with the client, things eased off, but it was not a happy place where I wanted my family person to be in, and I lost them. So after that, I put a lot of things into place where, like, hey, you know what? For example, like, I'll share that I'm the point person. And when they need to speak to my team member, I'm there, because to me, my family is important to me as my client is. And giving them that voice, giving them that space that, okay, for example, let's say, if you're working on the projects and we are developing the timeline, before we even sit down and do the timeline with the clients, I will ask my team that, look at what are the projects you have on your plate and what else is going on in your personal life, and give me a time that you can deliver on. So as you work with your team members and as you are allowing them the space, it's also important that there is that mutual goals where they also know that, you know what, I'm going to give the time and then I'm going to stick with it. So it's also important that it's not a one-way street, that it's a street that where they realize that it's a team, it's a family, that we all got to push in the same direction. Especially, I love the crew sport, that everybody's rowing in the same direction. Only then the business or your company becomes successful. And they deliver above and beyond every single time. So what you're sharing is so powerful. So Natasha, share with us, where people can find you, and if you have something to share with our listeners.
Sure. So the core business that we've been talking about is entireproductions.com. And my personal website is officialnatashamiller.com. And I do have a book, a memoir coming out in March that I'm so excited about, and also terrified and nervous because I come it's a very raw rendition of my life. There's some things in it that I think, oh God, everyone's going to know this about me now, but I think that I left it in there because it's important for people to see that vulnerability. And you can put your name on the wait list for pre-order on officialnatashamiller.com.
Oh, and thank you for being vulnerable in your book. And it's hard. It's hard when we lay ourselves out for people. But it's also important to share that there are times that, to me, it's always, life is imperfectly perfect. And I, as human being, also believe for myself, I'm not speaking of anybody else, as being imperfectly perfect, in the sense that we get up, we dust off our failures and move on, because that dust from the failures becomes the wonderful breeding ground for the future success seed. So as
Absolutely.
we kind of bring our show to a closure, what are a few things that you'd like to leave our audience with?
I would say, the overview of the book and the overview of where I am as a person right now is that no matter where you're at, if you have lots of success, but there's still more that you want to do, if you have lots of success, but you're stuck secretly with some things, mentally and emotionally, or if you're hitting rock bottom, you're alone, you're depressed, there's no way up, is that there really is a way, and there's a way to get to the things that you want to do. And I can tell you from my own experience, there's a way to get to places you never knew even ever existed for you. So it's really exciting when you think about what the possibilities are.
Oh, possibilities. And when we talk about possibilities, you brought up emotional and mental state. So any words of wisdom on that?
I didn't hear before words of wisdom. Can you repeat that?
Absolutely. So, you do talk about mental well-being and some exercises for mental well-being. Any words of wisdom you want
Yes.
to share
So
about that?
I use physical activity, not for toning and shaping and weight loss, but for mental health. So I will go out on a long walk. I'll even go out for a short, brisk walk. I like to get into a kayak and go kayaking. I'm not a super sporty person, but hiking, doing some things like that are solely for mental health. And I really think, it's a huge savior for me. Another thing that I do to, feel better when things aren't going great, for me, it is playing the piano. For you, it's beating on your drum. So even though those aren't, considered physical fitness activities, it is a physical activity, and it takes your mind away from what's keeping you in a funk into just another plane that hopefully will push you into something more positive.
Absolutely. And it's so important, folks, know that you are perfect as you are. And that doesn't mean that you don't strive for growth. It's the thing is that accepting yourself where you're at and finding that clarity, especially as we step into the new year's, because believe it or not, 2021 is at a close and we will be meeting in the new year's. So I want to invite you. Here's our space where we are here to serve you. Share with us your stories, which you do, and I'm very, very thankful and grateful for that. Reach out to us, how we can support you. And yes, think about it. Think of your life as a wagon, your dreams that you want to go for, and you are the driver, and then there are two horses on one side. Your one horse is just going rampant in one direction, like your desire, like, hey, I want to have this dream, I have this desire, my calling. And on the other side, there is this other horse that's taking your wagon in another direction of fear and doubts. So rein it in and bring that courage in despite that fear, and ring the new year in with your dream, even if it is taking one small step. So folks, until next time, I wish you a happy year, happy new year, and want to see you succeed. Thank you, Natasha. It was such a joy having you here. And folks, do get her book. I am definitely getting on that pre-order list. It sounds phenomenal. And we wish you all the best, Natasha.
Thank you so much for having me.
And thank you, Jason, for making this show technically possible. And we'll see you until next time, folks. So be well and take care.
Thank you for being part of Beyond Confidence with your host, Divya Parekh. We hope you have learned more about how to start living the life you want. Each week on Beyond Confidence, you hear stories of real people who have experienced growth by overcoming their fears and building meaningful relationships. During Beyond Confidence, Divya Parekh shares what happened to her when she stepped out of her comfort zone to work directly with people across the globe. She not only coaches people how to form heart connections, but also transform relationships to mutually beneficial partnerships as they strive to live the life they want. If you are ready to live the life you want and leverage your strengths, learn more at www.divyaparekh.com. And you can connect with Divya at contact@divyaparekh.com. We look forward to you joining us next week.